Women to Watch is an intimate look into the lives of prominent and influential women leaders from around the world and the challenges they faced on their journey. It's the real story behind her title. Join us every week to hear more stories about women from around the world and in your own communities at womentowatch.net.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
For the big story on Action News,
search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another week of Women to Watch. I'm Sue Rocco. Thanks so much for joining me for another week of profiling women leaders from around the world. This week, I'm going to be joined by Patricia Wellenbach, and Patricia is the president and CEO of the Please Touch Museum here in Philadelphia. She is also the very first woman and nurse to chair the Jefferson University Board of Trustees. So we're going to be talking about all of the roles that she has. As always, you'll hear from our corporate partners who make up our watch team of on-air contributors during the show. And this week, you'll be hearing from Madeline Bell of Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, and also Carol Eggert, head of military affairs for Comcast. So now I'm very excited and honored to welcome to the show, Patricia Wellenbach.
How are you? Good to see
Hi.
you.
I'm good, Trish. Thanks so much for being with me.
Pleasure.
My first question right off the bat, because I've been born and raised in Philadelphia and had never heard of Tenafly, New Jersey. So, tell our listeners just a little bit about the community there and what it was like.
So back in the day, in the late 50s, early 60s, there small towns kind of started to grow up in the northern part of New Jersey, just across the George Washington Bridge, as families who had immigrated to this country started to move out of New York, Brooklyn, the Bronx, those areas, Staten Island. And so there's a whole community of towns there. In an area called Bergen County, and Tenafly was a small little town. Now it's a very big town. It's fascinating when I go back there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and the first town we lived in was Cresskill, New Jersey, in a development that had probably 40 or 50 homes, and I think there were 12 different languages spoken in the houses there, Polish and German and Italian.
Wow.
And at the end of our block was a horse farm. So that tells you how early it was in the stages of developing the northern part of New Jersey. So that's where I grew up.
Yeah. And also, we had a lovely introductory call, and we talked about growing up Irish Catholic.
Yes.
In the 60s, 70s for me, a little bit later. But when you think back at those times, I think there's always this sense of a traditional, normal childhood being raised, at that time, so very different from today. What stands out for you as, very prominent in your younger years?
Yeah, so traditional, normal, those are interesting adjectives to describe it. I was the oldest of 5 children. It was, very traditional at that time. My father worked out of the home in New York. He was the first generation of Irish immigrants, first to go to college in his family, the youngest of 7 children. My mother was second generation. Her family immigrated here, my great-grandparents, and they both grew up in the Bronx. And my father met my mother through my grandfather, my maternal grandfather, because the guys used to go to the local parish school and play bingo, and my father called the bingo call numbers over the loudspeaker in the school. And then they were fortunate enough, because my father did go to college and earned a very good wage when he got out of college, that they could afford to buy a house and move to New Jersey, which is kind of what happened. Yeah. And my mom lived at home. We had one car. My father took the bus to New York, and grew up in a pretty busy neighborhood. No gates, no fences. 10 houses in a row, and every mother opened the door in the morning and you landed in someone's house for lunch and someone sent you home for dinner. And I actually think at the time any parent on the block could discipline any other kid. Like, it didn't matter whether you're my kid or not. I get to tell you, you're out of line. Go home.
Right. On my street, every neighbor had the key to everyone else's house.
Yeah.
Just in case.
I'm not sure we even locked the doors.
I don't think our doors were locked either, so I'm not sure what those keys were for. But.
Yeah. And it's fascinating to me now, because when I think about the engagement of parents in raising young children. So at the time we were living in this development in Cresskill, and I went to the Catholic grammar school one town over in Tenafly. So think about the difference between like Bryn Mawr and Ardmore, or like that far, not far at all.
Right.
And so I was in the first grade, and I used to walk 3 blocks, crossed 2 streets, and got on a New Jersey, New York bus. I had a little packet of bus tickets, and I would give the bus driver my bus ticket, and I would get on the bus. I was in the first grade, and I would try to sit in the front. And that was the bus that actually went to Manhattan. That's where it landed at the end. Manhattan.
Wow.
And I would get off at the bus stop in Tenafly and walk 2 blocks over to the school in the schoolyard. I don't know any parent that would do that now.
No, not at all. Were there other children with you getting on this bus? And
there was
traveling?
one older girl who lived in our neighborhood. She was probably in the 5th grade, 6th grade when I was in the 1st grade. And that was it. And, 2 young girls. I would walk a block and a half, get to the front of her house, meet up with her. So kind of fascinating.
Yeah. Absolutely. And, later in the show, I do want to talk to you about, your role with the museum and kind of some differences that you see amongst children today, from the time we were growing up. And so what we did live in kind of a, just a much freer time. And I wonder, as a little girl, what were you afraid of? Was there anything that you were afraid of, even though you had this freedom to just kind of be out and about in the community by yourself?
I don't actually remember thinking about the word fear when I was a little kid. I didn't love roller coasters. I was tall, and we used to go to Palisade Park and places like that had the big roller coasters, and you had to be a certain height to get on the roller coaster. And because I was tall, I think I took my first big roller coaster ride when I was 7, and I was too little to get on, but I was tall enough to fit. And so I didn't really like roller coasters after that. I still don't particularly like them. But I don't know that I really was afraid of anything. And decades later, as my father was older, and I remember him coming to me once, you were a most fearless child. And typically oldest children are not fearless. They're much more grounded to the family and not as adventuresome, maybe because the parents are watching them so much. I don't know. But I'm probably more afraid of things now than I was then.
Well, we just know too much. We just have way too much information. Yeah.
Correct.
Tell me about your grandmother, your relationship with her. I know you had a really close relationship with her, and you attribute a little bit of your courage and independence to your time with her.
Yeah. So I was very, very close with my grandmother. I had the great fortune that I was 40 when she passed away. So I had a good long life with her.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And she was an integral part of our family because her husband died when I was 2. They were still living in the Bronx at the time. And my grandmother, to her credit, had been a at-home mom her whole life. And she raised 2 daughters, my mother and her younger sister, who was 3 years younger. And my grandmother ended up going back to work and became a secretary. And when she retired, she was what today would have been called the executive assistant to the chairman of the board of Frank B. Hall Corporation. I mean,
oh, wow.
Yeah, they had her retirement party at Windows on the World. I mean,
Oh, wow. That's so cool.
But she always considered herself a secretary. But she had this tremendous capacity for bringing people into her life, and just she was just a wonderful, wonderful person. And she taught me a lot about integrity and ethics, and I didn't even realize it. She'd be sitting there at dinner on a Friday night, because she used to come out to New Jersey on Friday night and spend the weekends with us. And, she'd talk about, well, I go to the ladies' room because of my job. Like all the other secretaries want to know what I know. And I just say, I don't know anything. Like you have to understand, like when you have big responsibilities, you have to protect those responsibilities, and you have to be accountable and respectful of the role that you have. And, but she also had this amazing capacity. Like if anyone was sick or needed anything, there was always a meal delivered. When she was older and retired to Florida, she was retired and she was doing respite care so that families who had family members who maybe were stroke victims or had Alzheimer's and were at home, she would go in and take care of the compromised family members so the other family members could get out, maybe go get your hair done or go for a walk or whatever. She could throw a great party. I remember coming when I was out of college. I was in a bar one night with some friends of mine, and my grandmother was there, and we went home, and she was still there. So she was an accomplished piano player. She was, and I was so fortunate when I had my own children, who are now 36 and 33. She came and stayed with me for a month when both of the boys were born, and those boys were very close to their great-grandmother. As a matter of fact, my granddaughter's middle name is my grandmother's name. And
what is that?
Marion. And it was such an honor to her when my son told us that, meet your first granddaughter, Cora Marion. And,
that's so nice.
Meant the world to us. So.
Yeah, that's so nice. Did she talk to you about being a girl, a woman, and going out and pursuing your dreams and aspirations? Was there that kind of independence that she wanted you to have?
Yeah, so my grandmother taught me how to cook, how to bake, how to sew my own clothes.
Okay.
She taught me how to press a man's shirt so it looked fabulous. I mean, she had all of those skills, and I think as she was teaching me those things, we'd be having these conversations. And when I was 9, I was in the Girl Scouts, and my first badge was a cooking badge. And I cooked Sunday dinner for my whole family. There were 7 of us plus my grandmother. And I remember roasting a chicken, fixing the green beans, baking a pie. And I'm sure throughout the entire time that she was kind of standing there in that kitchen coaching me, she was helping me to build a sense of confidence that I could tackle anything. Mm-hmm. And I think it was subliminal. I don't ever remember her being like the grandmother on in Downton Abbey, sitting down with Lady Mary, giving her sage advice. But I somehow think that was my grandmother.
It's so interesting that you mentioned being a Girl Scout. Last week we had the head of Southern Central New Jersey, Girl Scout Jenny Hill, on the show. And it's just fascinating to me the percentage of women who are in positions of leadership who were Girl Scouts. What do you remember about that? How do you think that impacted where you are today?
Yeah, I think it's a point of great pride for the Girl Scouts and what they have contributed to women leaders over decades and decades. And you have to remember, I grew up in the 60s and the early 70s, and there weren't a lot of ways for women to excel and show leadership, and to really invest in yourself for confidence. I mean, this was before women young girls were getting really active in sports and things like that. I mean, it just was at the early stages of that. So I think through Girl Scouts, I don't know, there was this community, and you would want to try something to get a badge, right? And so you would get this courage and self-confidence. I think that's part of what they do instill in you, this sense of you can do it. Just try it. You can fail at it and then try it again and you'll figure it out. And so I really think that is part of what happens in Girl Scouts. And I think the interesting thing was also, a little bit of competition, cookie sales. My grandmother used to help me achieve my cookie sale. She used to take the sheet to the office and get everyone to sign up for her cookie sale.
There you go.
A little bit of competition. And so it just all worked out.
Plus, it's an environment of all girls. So I think often we talk on the show about an all-girls school versus, co-ed. And I think there's always that lack of distraction the boys not being there, and the girls can, really dive into that competitive part of the organization and want to excel.
Yeah, I went to a co-ed grammar school and then an all-girls high school.
Oh, you did? Yeah.
And
Tell me about,
yeah. So I went to an all-girls high school run by the School Sisters of Notre Dame, talk about, Catholic school environments, tremendously remarkable order of nuns, and had high standards for all of us. And this was when nuns still wore habits. And, they were a big presence in our lives. And I think being in those environments, particularly as, we've studied and come to learn, particularly girls who gravitate towards math and science, get through those middle school years and you start to get a little reticent in a classroom. You can't be reticent in a classroom when, it's all girls, and particularly when the nuns are there, because they'll just call on you. My maiden name was Dolan, and the nuns would go, Miss Dolan, translate that Latin phrase. What do you got for me?
Yeah.
And so, when you're all leaders and you're all supporting each other. And, my dearest friend in the world, I met on my first day of high school. And we have been friends since we were 14. And her last name was DeVivo. My last name was Dolan.
There you go. Right.
There you go.
The alphabet.
And we've had a remarkable journey together. We did not grow up in the Philadelphia area, and she and her husband ended up living here, and we raised children together, and it's been such a gift to me.
Yeah.
So I still carry I can call my friend Ro and go, remember Sister Mary Aquin when she said.
That I have a very similar story. And then, of course, my daughter went to the Mount St. Joe Academy, all girls, and one of her dearest friends she met as a freshman as well. When did you start to think about nursing school?
When I was in high school, I started working when I was about 11, but I always did volunteer work. Again, that was inspired by my grandmother. She did a lot of volunteer work. She used to volunteer at the Foundling Home in New York and feed orphaned babies and cuddle them in the days, in the early days of before that was even in vogue to do. And so I volunteered one summer at Englewood Hospital, and it was a remarkable experience. And I just walked in there and I'm like, oh, I think this is where I should belong. I mean, up until that time, I actually was not a big math and science geek, and I really gravitated more towards writing and English and history, and I thought I'd end up going to law school. But that summer that I was volunteering at the hospital, I was like, oh, I think this is for me. So I wasn't the 6-year-old girl saying I want to be a nurse when I grow up. I was probably 15 that summer.
Wow.
And then kind of decided it's what I wanted to do. And it didn't, I had my moments of, oh my goodness, can I do this? Should I do this? And a really tough identity time in my junior year of college, thinking, oh, I'm not sure I can do this. But it was one of the best decisions I ever made for myself to this day.
Yeah. How hard was school for you? Was it, did you have to work really, really hard, to get those good grades, or was school kind of, did it come easy for you?
No, I had to work hard. I had a fair amount of discipline. I was fond of telling my own children, really take advantage of school, because, when you're sitting in the bar stool when you're 40 talking to your buddies, no one's going to say, gee, I wish I partied more in college or high school. They're going to say, gee, I wish I took a few more courses in this or worked a little harder. And I think you can always work harder. But I'm a smart kid. I would say I'm much more street smart than book smart. So the book smart, I have to work out a little bit more.
Okay. You shared something with me. You said you always had this sense of finding new potential in yourself. And I love the way you said that, because I think, there's no doubt life is a journey, and we're constantly evolving and learning new things about ourselves. And you wondered what you may have missed along the way. Have you discovered something about yourself that is a potential that you did miss when you were growing up?
I often I wonder, well, if I had gotten the MBA or the PhD, where would the journey have been different, right? And or if I had played a sport, what would have, I have a tendency to excel at everything I do, right? I keep pushing myself to get there. And so I often wonder, like, so what were the things that I might have thought about doing or that just didn't come across my pathway that may have taken me on a different journey? It's not that I don't love the journey I've been on, and I continue to love it. It's been tremendous. I mean, I've had a great run and a great ride, and I'm still enjoying every minute of it.
Yeah.
So.
Listen, we're going to go into our first break. And when we come back, I want to talk about a little bit of a career crisis you had as a junior in college.
Yes.
Stay with us for our watch team, and we'll be back with Patricia Wellenbach.
We are CHOP, and we can't wait to show you around. We're the nation's first children's hospital. Now, a care network with more than 50 locations that continues to expand. 3 state-of-the-art research buildings with 1.5 million square feet of space. We have grown from 12 beds 165 years ago to nearly 600 beds and one of the best children's hospitals in the world. We have a level 1 trauma center, 11 floors of patient units, more than 20 operating rooms, first of its kind delivery unit for babies with birth defects, a separate cardiac operative and catheterization suite, and places to learn, like our internationally recognized simulation center. We have trained generations of leaders in the field of pediatrics. We are world leaders in medicine, surgery, and science. One of the top recipients in NIH funding for pediatric research. In this building, pioneers in CAR T therapy, mitochondrial disease, brain tumors, hyperinsulinism, and other rare diseases. Here, groundbreaking work in fetal surgery, genetics and genomics, and neurology. In our newest building, leaders in social determinants of health, clinical informatics and epidemiology, autism, trauma and injury prevention. Our patients come from every state and 115 countries. Meeting these challenges requires the best and the brightest. We are passionate about pediatrics. We are motivated to make a difference in the world and in our community. We are a team. We are CHOP.
Do you stream on a Roku, a Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app. Watch action news live,
And the big story on Action News.
plus special programming, breaking news, and severe weather updates.
Tremendous amounts of rain.
Always on, always the news team you trust. Watch 6ABC 24/7 on your streaming device. Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
Hi, and welcome back to the show. I'm joined this week by Patricia Wellenbach. Patricia is the president and CEO of the Please Touch Museum here in Philadelphia, and also board chair for Jefferson University Board of Trustees. And I wanted to talk a little bit about a crisis, so-called crisis that you had as a junior in college. Tell us what happened.
Yeah, I was a junior at Boston College studying to be a nursing student. As a nursing student, studying to be a nurse. And, you know, nurses don't have a lot of flexibility in their scheduling. You spend a lot of time either in the science lab or in the hospital. And I was in an accelerated program and almost finishing up all of my clinical placements. And I was going home. I had one more big clinical placement, and then I was going to do my thesis the following fall. And I was going home for the Christmas holiday, and I thought, I don't know that I should do this. I'm not sure. I maybe this is not for me. And I just hadn't found my spot yet, my rhythm. And I went home and I told my parents, now, first generation to go to college, and now their oldest daughter's at college, and she's going, I'm not sure this is working. And my father said, oh, well, you had better figure that out, my friend.
Yeah.
And so I went back to school and I met with my advisor, and she said, oh, Trish, you're going to be just fine. And I said, I don't think so. And she said, I'll tell you what, she said, there's this new program that's starting at Duke University at the hospital there, and it's a nurse externship program for the summer. I think they're only taking Duke students, but why don't you apply for it and go and see, get in the clinical setting for an entire summer and see. And I said, okay, I'll give that a try. I had to actually go home and open a map and find out where Durham was. I mean, I knew where it was, so I'm like, okay, that's pretty far south, and how am I going to get there? And I applied, and the Monday of Memorial Day weekend, I got into my little Dodge Colt, and I drove all by myself, no air conditioning, roll down windows,
No GPS.
no GPS, no cell phones, no Sirius. There's nothing to get me through. I remember getting off the main highway, and then the last 2 hours into Durham was almost like a dirt road. And I think I cried my way into Durham, going like, what am I doing here?
Oh my gosh.
And I checked in and I got assigned to an apartment, and there were two other girls, both from Russell Sage College in Albany, New York. And I spent the entire summer working on Carter Suite, which was the high-risk labor and delivery suite at Duke at the time. And I just found my home.
Wow.
And
that's a stressful environment.
It is very stressful, very stressful. But I was like, this is what I was born to do.
Wow.
And I came back feeling like, okay, I'm ready. Let's go. And that's how I launched my career as a high-risk labor and delivery nurse. And I think it was that long drive to Durham and not knowing a soul that made me fearless about moving to Philadelphia a year later when I didn't know a soul in the city, and just came here and fought hard for a job at Pennsylvania Hospital in their labor and delivery suite. And, 4 decades later, here I am, running one of the most remarkable children's museums in the country, a gift to the children of our city and our region, and the first woman chair of Thomas Jefferson University in 200 years. I mean, it's just remarkable to me. I sometimes wake up and go, how'd that happen?
How did that happen? Yeah. It's so funny because life just goes so fast. And 40 years ago, you weren't aiming for that, right? So tell me about the opportunity at the Please Touch Museum. How did that come about?
Yeah, so I've had several different careers in my professional life, and the kind of last big career I had was I had a consulting firm, and I did a lot of work for organizations, and then ended up getting recruited to run a school for children with autism and severe emotional challenges. And that organization was in deep financial crisis, et cetera. And I had really created a portfolio of experience to take mission-driven organizations from crisis to success, and worked there for a little over 2.5 years and really stabilized them, saved the school, and did a lot of work there, and was just finishing up that work. And Sally Stetson, who was the board chair at the museum at the time, they were in deep financial distress and challenge. They were entering into a bankruptcy. They had $60 million worth of debt. And Sally called me one day and said, I don't know if anyone's put their name on your dance card yet, but if you're thinking about doing something next after Green Tree, would you come and work for us? I'm like, Sally, I'm kind of tired. I just did that work. And she said, well, we could really use you. And that was the summer of 2015. And by November, I was here, and it has been an amazing journey for me. I have learned so much, worked with so many remarkable people, and have such pride in the work that we have done. Not only did we survive a really challenging bankruptcy and financial crisis, then we survived a year-long closure during the pandemic, reopened. We are beating our 2019 numbers for visitors, for revenue. We've launched a remarkable program in kindergarten readiness, getting underserved and under-accessed children ready to learn and launch in kindergarten. That's got $1 million worth of federal funding behind it. We've got big plans for 2026. So I love this job. I make children and grown-ups happy every day. What could be better?
Yeah. So what do you think your secret is to looking at a problem as severe as, a museum having to file for bankruptcy and turning it around? What is going through your mind? What am I going to do first?
I kind of get in my head where I think we should go. And then I say, okay, what am I going to do first? So when I came here for the bankruptcy, to work for them during the bankruptcy, I presumed that we would get out of the bankruptcy successfully. And so the question was, when we got out of the bankruptcy, what was this museum going to do? What was it going to be? How was it going to be valuable, relevant, and have a place in this city? And then I figured out what I had to do to get there. Who were the people that...
Yeah, did you analyze what did they not do, what was it that they were doing wrong that didn't allow them to flourish?
I don't think it's a great question, and so many people have asked me that question. And I could not say that it wasn't flourishing, because even in spite of their financial challenges, they never closed one day. Mm-hmm. They actually stayed true to mission. And what I really love is organizations that are messy and a little unsettled, that have remarkable mission and potential. Mm. And I'm fond of saying, give me 4 or 5 people who believe in the future of an organization, and I will help them build something remarkable. Wow. And that is
fun.
Yeah. And I never want to be the smartest person in the room, and I never want to be the only person in the room. And so I find that if I surround myself with really smart people who will ask me really good questions and challenge me, and are really talented at what I bring them into the community to do, and I get out of their way, it's amazing. I'm a builder and a gardener.
A builder and a gardener. There you go. And you know it, right? Yes. I think one of the things that I think holds people back, not just women, is they don't know what they're here meant to do. When did you discover that? When did you really understand this is what I do well?
Yeah. So probably about 12 years ago, a brilliant journalist asked me that question in an interview. And I was like, I don't know the answer to that. And then he said, oh, come on, Trish, you must know. And I thought about it and I said, oh, I know. So I was 21 years old, working in the high-risk labor and delivery unit at Pennsylvania Hospital. We did 6,000 plus deliveries a year. Very complicated deliveries, really complex communities that we were serving. And I was in a room with a woman who was experiencing some of the most acute pain she had ever experienced in her life. And I had to look at her and say, look at me, come on. I got this with you. We're going to get through this together. And I promise you on the other side, it's going to be amazing. Now, that's not the language I used, but it's what I did. I always knew that if you could get the patient through that deep pain, through that deep uncertainty, that if you were their Sherpa guide, could support them, encourage them, help them, put the right support person in the room with them, that amazing things would happen. And I think I learned it there. I also learned in a labor and delivery unit where you could walk on the unit and there'd be nobody in labor, and 16 hours later we delivered 28 babies, which actually happened to me one night.
Oh my gosh.
You got to know who to tell where to go when. Like, you go there, now you try this. And I remember saying to one senior physician, you want to do this cesarean section? I'll tell you what, you mop the floor, I'll set the room for you. And he got off and mopped the floor, and I set the room, and he got started. So,
wow.
You let time become your enemy when babies are on their way.
Oh my gosh. Well, are you an optimist? I mean, would you say you're an optimist?
I would say I am an optimist. My husband says not as much as I should be. He says, every once in a while you get that maudlin Irish thing going, honey. But I do believe that there is a solution to every problem. And that if you just take a breath, all right, what's the solution? What's the problem? What are you trying to solve for? Who has to help me solve the problem? And how are we going to get there? I think as a leader, things go right, you give the credit. Things go wrong, you take the blame. And I always have behaved that way. If things don't go well, I got to own it, right? Like I missed it, or I didn't get it right. That's what authentic leadership is about. And when things go really well, it's not me, it's this individual, this team, this group. It's what you have to do. I mean, It's how you actually aggregate people that want to work with you. I never think of anyone as working for me. And there are many times that I'm working for them, right? What can I do for you to help you succeed, to make you feel rewarded in the work that you do every day? It's an
That's
important
really good
question for
advice.
leaders to ask.
Yes, really good advice. And the ability to be humble in your role at the top. Tell me, do you think about your role with Thomas Jefferson University as the first? Firsts are exciting, especially firsts for women, and we're
Yeah.
seeing a lot. So the first woman in nurse to chair the board. What are you most proud of, other than landing that title?
I think that in the course of everything I have done up until the point where the board invited me to be the chair and represent the organization at the highest level at the board table, I believe that everything I did got me ready for that. Everything from being a nurse to being a caregiver and a caretaker for parents and family members who have gone through health crises, through shepherding organizations through good times and challenging times, to building boards, to building executive leadership teams, to restructuring. I think all of that, I am so proud of all of those accomplishments, and I think that's what got me ready.
Do you see the connection between that and even the little girl, the oldest of 5, who had to kind of lean in and help at home? Is there a connection there?
Yes, because sometimes as the leader, whether you're the CEO or the board member, you do play a little bit of a role of a peacemaker, a connector, an interpreter, right, to all the voices in the room. Even if it's just, I'm making the lunches for all my siblings and I only got 8 minutes and I got to do 5 sandwiches and like everybody wants to be different. I'm like, no, we're having peanut butter and jelly today. Tomorrow we're going to have, cream cheese and jelly. Like, because you want cream cheese. I'm like, I don't have time for that. I think I was probably 9 when I was saying that. And I think that's really kind of what you have to be. I also think as I have evolved in my leadership in the business world and in the boardroom, I talk less and less. And I practice that a lot as the board chair. I want to hear from the management team. I want to hear from the trustees in the room. And then I want to be able to create the connections between what I'm hearing. One of my gifts is that I do see around corners before they come. And it's a great asset of mine. And I can provide counsel to even my board chair here at the museum and say, listen, I think this is how this is going to go. And why don't we start to plan for that? And that has also really served me well. And it's been something that people have commented on, that I'm able to kind of see that before other people do.
Mm-hmm. I think you have a very good sense of who you are, which, when we talk about what holds women back in particular, I often think it's that just sense of not knowing who they are and what they're good at. And I think a good leader has to be decisive. Are you decisive? Something comes to you, which is probably on a daily basis between your 2 roles. You're not going to belabor it. You're going to see it and make a decision.
I usually don't belabor it because if you're paying attention at all time, you're probably almost ready for it, right? Not everything.
Yeah.
But as you get older and you have more experiences, you've got that arsenal in your head that you can go, oh, I've been in this room before. It may have been a little bit different, but I think I know how the movie ends, right? And so what do I want to move around now so that it doesn't end that way, or it does end that way?
Yeah.
We're going to get there.
Yeah.
I think also that, listen, I've had amazing titles: daughter, sister, friend, mother, wife, CEO, board member, grandmother, board chair. They're all part of who I am. And at any given moment in my life, one of those may take more precedent than others. I was a patient in our hospital a year ago. I was quite unexpectedly diagnosed with cancer. And I wondered at the time, why now? When I'm the chair and now I'm the patient and I'm going to experience it this way. What am I going to learn? How will that make me a better chair? How will that make me be more attuned to what the management team is struggling with or problem solving for or moving through? And how am I called to be a stronger chair because of that? All those experiences
I would
come to
imagine.
bear.
Yeah, all of that you learned from that experience.
Yes. And so, it is the aggregation of everything that makes you a stronger leader, a stronger contributor to our community. I am deeply committed to Philadelphia. I will do everything and anything I can to continue to sit at whatever table I need to sit at to help it improve and realize all of its potential too. So there's lots of work to do, and I believe I'm called to do certain things at certain times, and I lean in. I just wait and go, okay, maybe this is where I should go next.
Yeah, that's a really good attitude. Can you tell us something that'll make us hopeful? Many of us are worried about the healthcare system just in the United States in general. And I know that a lot has happened post-COVID. Something that will make us hopeful that the Thomas Jefferson health system itself is working on, that's exciting and you're excited about.
Yeah, well, first of all, we are lucky in the Philadelphia region that we probably have the most accomplished healthcare, academic, medical centers, pediatric hospitals, research, maybe in the country. And so the ability to provide access is here. What we've got to do is start to lean in and address the inequities in access to healthcare and erase those disparities. And I think that's something that Jefferson is very committed to, not to do it alone, but to do it in partnership with our other healthcare institutions. I think we're doing everything that we can at Jefferson to make care even more humane. It's a scary place being in a hospital. And just think about the reason why you have to go to a hospital. You're scared before you go, and then you walk in. And there's so much unknown. And so what do we need to be doing in the entire patient experience, the caregiver experience? And that's something you have to work on all the time. This is going to sound a little odd, but healthcare has always been opaque to people. And part of it is because you come into it for the most part when you're in crisis. I think in general, we need to move to more preventive interventions so that we don't have so many people getting so into medical crisis and then getting care. And I think that's an issue that's a problem in the entire country. We just have to really start, because you can see when you do preventive interventions how children, families, communities thrive.
Right. Are you seeing nurses coming back? There was a huge, not influx, but a lot of nurses left the field. It was too stressful and too hard during the pandemic. Are you seeing them coming back?
Not only am I seeing them coming back, I'm seeing them coming in, right? Starting their careers in nursing. And I think that's actually a wonderful affirmation of where we will go. And nurses and doctors have a special place in them that inspires them to do the work that they do, as hard as it is in moments of joy and deep sadness and challenge. I know every time I walk in the hospital, my entire demeanor changes and I get in my, I'm a nurse mode.
I bet. Yeah, I bet. Well, the last thing I have for you, it's fascinating to me, the two different roles you have. I can't imagine what a typical day is.
It's a busy one.
It's a busy one.
Each role makes me better at the other role. Hands down. There is no denying that. And a lot of people asked me when I was appointed as the chair, I don't understand how you're going to do this. How are you going to be the CEO and the chair at the same time? And I'm like, if I was a guy, would you ask me that question? There's a couple of big executives in this city who had big, massive jobs who are also chairs of pretty big institutions. And I don't think anybody
boards. Yes.
I don't think anybody called them and said, how are you going to do that? So I believe that if you are in a space that you are deeply engaged, that you are learning from and contributing to, time doesn't become an issue.
I can see how much you love the work. You love what you're doing. It's really wonderful. I wish you continued success, and thank you so much for being on the show to share some of your story. A lot of great lessons.
Thank you for inviting me. It's been a fabulous fast hour.
Yes, it has. It has. Stay tuned for our watch team, and we'll be right back.
Action News, celebrating 50 years with AccuWeather.
If you think severe weather has been on the rise, you are correct. In the last 3 years, tornado warnings in our region have shattered records, with 52 last year alone. Half of those warnings resulted in confirmed tornadoes, including 2 extremely rare EF3s. Thanks for always trusting us to keep you informed.
50 Years of AccuWeather is sponsored by Independence Blue Cross. Choose coverage you can count on with the region's strongest network.
Is the best vacation one that you find, or one you get lost in? One that takes you to new heights, or reminds you to go with the flow? To get your feet wet and your wheels spinning? One that lets you find your own rhythm, or get carried away? Find the best of yourself. Get lost in the woods. Plan your stay in the Wildwoods today.
From Philadelphia to the Lehigh Valley and everywhere in between. For 150 years, Penn Community Bank has been a part of your neighborhood. Helping businesses start, supporting families as they grow, and staying connected to the people and places that make this region special. It's who we are and where we're from. Penn Community Bank. Here we are, and here we grow.
There's a moment every hour, every day, every week. These moments shape our world. They add color, perspective, and sometimes pain. Moments are meant to be shared by friends, family, people you trust. At Action News, we cherish every moment, and it's our profound responsibility to bring you closer to your world. Never miss a moment. Trust the people at Action News.
Do you stream on a Roku, a Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app. Watch Action News live.
And the big story on Action News.
Plus special programming, breaking news, and severe weather updates.
Tremendous amounts of rain.
Always on. Always the news team you trust. Watch 6ABC 24/7 on your streaming device. Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
Hi, this is Sue Rocco. Women to Watch is pleased to share a clip from Breaking Through, a podcast hosted by Madeline Bell, the president and CEO of Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. This interview is part of a series in which Madeline interviews CHOP's women scientists about what inspires them and advice they have for other women interested in pursuing science and medicine careers.
My guest today is Dr. Diva DeLeon. Dr. DeLeon is Chief of the Division of Endocrinology and Diabetes at CHOP. She is also co-director of a frontier program that is focused on developing new treatments for a rare disease called congenital hyperinsulinism. Did you have any role models or mentors along the way once you chose your path as a physician?
Particularly, I can remember a pediatric resident. So this resident gave me opportunities to develop some new skills as a medical student that some of my peers did not have the opportunity to develop. And I think that was important for me to see the path in front of me and to make me feel confident in my decision of becoming a pediatrician.
Let's get back to a little bit about your work and your research. Can you tell our listeners what is congenital hyperinsulinism?
It's basically the opposite to diabetes. So in diabetes, your blood sugar is high because you do not produce enough insulin. In hyperinsulinism, your blood sugar is low because you produce too much insulin.
What would happen to a child in the future if their hyperinsulinism was not treated?
failure of brain function that in the short term can manifest with a seizure and even death.
To hear more of Madeline's interviews with CHOP's amazing doctors and scientists, listen to Breaking Through with Madeline Bell, available wherever you get your podcasts.
At Action News, we cherish every moment, and it's our profound responsibility to bring you closer to your world. Never miss a moment. Trust the people at Action News.
Now, the Women to Watch, Military Watch.
Fewer than half of eligible veterans use the VA health benefits they are entitled to. But those who do use the VA, more than 80% of veterans are satisfied with the VA care. Hi, I'm Carol Eggert, Senior Vice President of Military Affairs at Comcast NBC Universal. Now, you may be asking, why should this matter to me? I share this with you because most of our listeners have some connection to the veterans in their community and may have the opportunity to share information about this new VA benefit. The VA has just launched the PACT Act, which is the Promise to Address Comprehensive Toxics, which is the most significant expansion of veteran benefits and care in more than 3 decades, empowering the VA to help millions of toxic-exposed veterans and their survivors. The PACT Act expands VA health care and benefits for veterans exposed to burn pits, Agent Orange, and many other toxic substances. The PACT Act adds to the list of health conditions that the VA presumes are caused by exposure to these substances. This law helps the VA provide generations of veterans and their survivors with the care and benefits they've earned and deserve. The PACT Act is the least we can do for the countless men and women who suffered toxic exposure while serving their country, said President Biden during the PACT Act bill signing ceremony. It means access to life insurance, home loan insurance, tuition benefits, and help with health care. So, what can you do? Simply refer those veterans you know to va.gov and tell them to search the PACT Act to learn more.
That's it for another week of Women to Watch. Thanks so much for being with me. And thank you as always to Kateri for producing the show and all of our Watch team members and sponsors. Next week, I'll be joined by Dr. Jin Lee. She is a neuropsychologist, an entrepreneur, and an advisor. Have a great week, everyone.
Action News, celebrating 50 years with AccuWeather.
If you think severe weather has been on the rise, you are correct. In the last 3 years, tornado warnings in our region have shattered records, with 52 last year alone. Half of those warnings resulted in confirmed tornadoes, including 2 extremely rare EF3s. Thanks for always trusting us to keep you informed.
50 Years of AccuWeather is sponsored by Independence Blue Cross. Choose coverage you can count on with the region's strongest network.
Is the best vacation one that you find, or one you get lost in? One that takes you to new heights, or reminds you to go with the flow? To get your feet wet and your wheels spinning? One that lets you find your own rhythm, or get carried away? Find the best of yourself. Get lost in the woods. Plan your stay in the Wildwoods today.
From Philadelphia to the Lehigh Valley and everywhere in between. For 150 years, Penn Community Bank has been a part of your neighborhood. Helping businesses start, supporting families as they grow, and staying connected to the people and places that make this region special. It's who we are and where we're from. Penn Community Bank. Here we are, and here we grow.
There's a moment every hour, every day, every week. These moments shape our world. They add color, perspective, and sometimes pain. Moments are meant to be shared by friends, family, people you trust. At Action News, we cherish every moment, and it's our profound responsibility to bring you closer to your world. Never miss a moment. Trust the people at Action News.
Do you stream on a Roku, a Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app. Watch Action News live.
And the big story on Action News.
Plus special programming, breaking news, and severe weather updates.
Tremendous amounts of rain.
Always on. Always the news team you trust. Watch 6ABC 24/7 on your streaming device. Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.